Picture this: a lush, towering paradise of greenery, cascading waterfalls, and vibrant blossoms suspended high above the desert sands. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, weren't just a feat of engineering. They were a testament to human ambition, a symbol of what happens when imagination meets ingenuity. But what if I told you this breathtaking marvel was just the beginning? Babylon's legacy stretches far beyond its gardens, weaving into the very fabric of our modern world, from the laws that govern societies to the stars that guide us. This city, shrouded in myth and mystery, was far more advanced than we've ever been taught. Think about the last time you walked past a towering skyscraper or glanced at a legal contract. Believe it or not, you owe a small debt to Babylon. This ancient metropolis pioneered concepts we still rely on today, from urban planning to written codes of justice. But here's the twist: many of its most astonishing achievements have been overshadowed by time, buried beneath layers of legend and sand. What secrets lie hidden in its crumbling walls? How did a city built over 4,000 years ago possess knowledge that still leaves scientists and historians in awe? That's exactly what we're about to uncover. In this journey, we'll reveal 20 fascinating facts about Babylon that will change the way you see history. From their groundbreaking astronomical discoveries to engineering feats that defy explanation, this city was a beacon of innovation in a world still finding its footing. Imagine standing beneath the towering Ishtar Gate, its glazed bricks shimmering in the sunlight, or deciphering celestial charts so precise they rival modern calculations. Babylon wasn't just a city, it was a revolution. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why its story isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror reflecting the heights of human potential. So, are you ready to step into the heart of one of history's greatest enigmas? Let's begin. Babylon wasn't just a city, it was a declaration. Its very name, whispered through millennia, carries divine weight. In the ancient Akkadian tongue, it was called Bab-Ilum, meaning Gate of the Gods. Imagine standing at the threshold of a place believed to bridge the earthly and the celestial, where rulers walked in the shadow of deities and every brick seemed touched by the divine. This wasn't mere poetry, it was the heartbeat of Mesopotamian belief. The Greek historian Herodotus once marveled at Babylon's splendor, calling it a city surpassing in grandeur any in the known world. And he wasn't exaggerating. Modern archaeologists have unearthed evidence of towering ziggurats and sprawling temples that once pulsed with religious fervor, confirming what ancient texts only hinted at. But here's what's even more fascinating. That name wasn't just aspirational. Babylon earned its divine reputation. As the political and spiritual nucleus of Mesopotamia, it became a magnet for scholars, priests, and visionaries who saw the city as a literal meeting point between gods and mortals. The famed Esagila temple, dedicated to Marduk, Babylon's patron deity, wasn't just a place of worship, it was the Axis Mundi, the cosmic center where heaven and earth converged. Yet for all its celestial aspirations, Babylon was also strikingly human. Its streets teemed with merchants, its courts buzzed with legal debates, and its astronomers charted the stars with precision that still stuns historians today. Now, if a name like Gate of the Gods sets the stage, just wait until you hear about the walls that guarded it. Because Babylon didn't just open doors to the divine, it built fortifications so mighty they became the stuff of legend. But that's a story for the next fact. The walls of Babylon weren't just barriers, they were masterpieces of military engineering. designed to awe as much as to defend. Ancient historians like Herodotus claimed they stretched over 56 miles in length, with towering double layers of brick and bitumen so thick, 2 chariots could race side by side along their summit. Picture that for a moment, a defensive structure so massive, it doubled as a royal highway, its sheer width a flex of Babylonian ingenuity. But here's where the legend gets even wilder. Some accounts, like those of the Greek writer Ctesias, swore the walls reached 350 feet high, taller than a 30-story skyscraper. Modern archaeologists, though, have brought us back to Earth. Excavations reveal the walls were likely only around 80 feet tall, yet even at that height, they were still a terrifying sight for any invading army. What's truly remarkable is how Babylon's rulers achieved this. The outer wall, nearly 25 feet thick, was reinforced with a moat and a second inner wall, creating a kill zone for attackers brave enough to breach the first line. The bricks themselves were stamped with the name of King Nebuchadnezzar II, a permanent boast in clay. "This is my doing, and it worked." For centuries, these walls stood unbroken, a symbol of invincibility. Even Alexander, the great conqueror of empires, reportedly gaped at their scale when he arrived in the 4th century B.C.E. Legend says he planned to restore them as a monument to his own glory, but death stole that ambition. Yet for all their grandeur, the walls were just the beginning of Babylon's defensive genius, because beyond them lay another marvel, a gate so dazzling it seemed plucked from myth. The Ishtar Gate wasn't just an entrance, it was a statement in cobalt and gold, a portal where art and engineering collided. Imagine approaching its towering arches, your eyes tracing the procession of roaring lions molded from glazed bricks, their golden manes shimmering against a backdrop of lapis lazuli blue. Each of these beasts, symbols of the goddess Ishtar, stood as silent guardians, radiating power and divine protection. But the magic wasn't just in the symbolism. The gate's vibrant hues were a technological triumph, achieved by firing quartz-rich clay at precise temperatures to create that unforgettable cerulean. Modern scientists examining the reconstructed gate in Berlin's Pergamon Museum made a startling discovery: traces of cobalt in the glaze, a pigment so advanced for its time that it rivals modern ceramic techniques. This wasn't merely decoration, it was theater. Every spring during the Akitu festival, Babylonian priests led a grand procession through the Ishtar Gate, reenacting the god Marduk's victory over chaos. The glazed tiles caught the sunlight, transforming the gate into a celestial mirror, while the lions seemed to come alive in the flickering torchlight. It was a sensory masterpiece designed to humble visitors and remind them of Babylon's unrivaled grandeur. Yet for all its spectacle, the gate also hid quiet innovations. The bitumen mortar between its bricks was mixed with crushed pottery, an ancient form of recycling that added strength while reducing weight. And just beyond this blue marvel lay another wonder, one that turned the desert green. Because if the Ishtar Gate showed Babylon's mastery of earth and fire, the Hanging Gardens revealed its command over water itself. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon have captivated imaginations for centuries, lush terraces overflowing with exotic plants, an oasis defying the desert's harshness. But what if this iconic wonder wasn't in Babylon at all? Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus painted vivid accounts of these gardens, crediting King Nebuchadnezzar II with their creation as a gift for his homesick Median wife, Queen Amytis. Yet here's the twist: not a single Babylonian text, tablet, or inscription from that era ever mentions them. The silence is deafening. This glaring absence has led scholars to a startling theory: the gardens might have been a case of mistaken identity. Assyriologist Stephanie Daly proposes they were actually in Nineveh, built by the Assyrian king Sennacherib a century earlier. Her evidence, ancient irrigation systems described in cuneiform tablets, match the engineering feats attributed to the gardens, including an intricate water-raising screw device. Even more compelling, Nineveh's location near modern-day Mosul fits descriptions of lush, elevated terraces better than Babylon's arid plains. So how did Babylon steal the credit? Blame the fog of time and Greek historians writing centuries after the fact. As Babylon's fame grew, its name became shorthand for Mesopotamian grandeur, eclipsing other cities. Yet the legend persists, fueled by Nebuchadnezzar's well-documented love for architectural marvels. Whether real or misplaced, the gardens symbolize something deeper, humanity's timeless desire to conquer nature with beauty. And if even a wonder's location can spark such debate, imagine what else we've gotten wrong about Babylon's legacy. Speaking of legacy, few things showcase Babylon's brilliance more than its contributions to science. While historians puzzle over gardens, there's no disputing the city's celestial breakthroughs. Long before the Greeks gazed at the heavens, Babylonian astronomers were charting the cosmos with startling precision. Their celestial observations weren't just guesses, they were meticulous records etched into clay tablets, some so accurate they're still referenced today. Take the Venus tablet of Amasajuka, a 700-year-old document tracking the planet's movements. Modern astrophysicists have compared its data to computer models and found the Babylonian calculations nearly identical. That's not luck, it's mathematical mastery, but their genius didn't stop there. These stargazers divided the sky into 12 equal segments, laying the foundation for the zodiac we know today. Each constellation carried divine significance, linking celestial patterns to earthly events. When they predicted eclipses, they didn't rely on myth, they used complex formulas based on cycles they'd identified centuries before anyone else. One tablet even details a solar eclipse from over 3,000 years ago, its timing matching modern retrocalculations to within minutes. What's truly remarkable is how they turned the sky into a practical tool. Farmers consulted star charts for planting seasons, while priests used them to time religious festivals. Even their astrology, often dismissed today, was rooted in rigorous observation. The famous Enuma Anu Enlil tablets weren't just mystical texts, they were data logs, correlating planetary positions with weather patterns and harvest yields. Yet for all their celestial wisdom, the Babylonians were equally grounded in earthly matters. Their laws didn't just govern people, they shaped civilizations. Because while they mapped the heavens, they also wrote the blueprint for justice itself. Hammurabi's code may be etched in history books as the pinnacle of ancient justice, but here's the truth: it wasn't the first. Centuries before Hammurabi raised his stone stele, the Sumerian king Ur-Nammu had already laid down laws in the city of Ur, his codes written around 2100 CE, focused on fines rather than vengeance, ordering payments of silver for offenses like bodily harm. Yet Hammurabi's 282 laws seized the spotlight, not just for their brutality but for their startling clarity. That famous eye for an eye principle wasn't just about retaliation, it was about proportionality, a revolutionary idea that crimes should match punishments. Take law number 229. If a builder's shoddy work caused a house to collapse and kill the owner, the builder would face execution. But if the collapse killed the owner's son, the builder's son would pay the price. Harsh, absolutely, but it reveals how deeply Babylon valued accountability, especially in professions affecting public safety. Another law demanded a surgeon's hands be severed if a patient died under their care, a grim incentive for precision. Yet woven between these brutal statutes were surprising glimpses of fairness. Women could own property and initiate divorces, while debtors were protected from endless servitude. What's often overlooked is how these laws shaped Babylon's physical landscape. A society this obsessed with order didn't just legislate behavior, it engineered it. Streets were laid wide enough for chariots, with drainage systems to prevent flooding. Zoning laws separated residential areas from industrial ones, reducing fire risks. Hammurabi's vision wasn't just carved in stone, it was baked into the bricks of the city itself. And speaking of bricks, Babylon's urban planning didn't stop at practicality. Their architects achieved something even more astonishing, blending form and function in ways that would make modern city planners gasp. Babylon didn't just build a city, it engineered a masterpiece of urban design, a blueprint so revolutionary it still echoes in modern metropolises. While other ancient settlements sprawled in chaotic tangles, Babylon's streets unfolded with mathematical precision, a grid of perfectly aligned avenues and canals dividing the city into orderly districts. Picture walking down Procession Street, its straight path leading directly to the Ishtar Gate, flanked by walls adorned with glazed lions. Every block was intentional temples clustered in sacred quarters, markets buzzing in commercial zones, and residential areas neatly separated from industrial workshops. This wasn't just planning, it was civic poetry. What made Babylon's layout truly groundbreaking was its foresight. Unlike Ur or Nineveh, where streets meandered like river bends, Babylon's grid accounted for traffic flow, sanitation, and even crowd control during festivals. Archaeologists have uncovered clay maps revealing districts color-coded by function, a system eerily similar to modern zoning laws. The Euphrates River, diverted into a network of canals, acted as the city's lifeblood, providing fresh water to every quadrant while serving as natural fire breaks between neighborhoods. But here's the twist, this wasn't just about efficiency. The grid mirrored Babylonian cosmology, with the ziggurat at its center symbolizing the axis mundi, the connection between heaven and earth. Even the city's outer walls formed a perfect square, aligning with cardinal directions to reflect cosmic order. The influence of this design rippled far beyond Mesopotamia. Centuries later, Greek architects like Hippodamus would adopt grid planning for cities like Miletus, while Roman engineers mirrored Babylon's hydraulic systems. Fast forward to today, and you'll see its legacy in New York's street grid or Paris's Haussmannian boulevards. Yet for all its structural genius, Babylon's true cultural wealth lay in something far more fragile: clay tablets. While their city planning shaped the physical world, their literary contributions shaped the mind. The Epic of Gilgamesh, etched in cuneiform, wasn't just the world's first great work of literature. It was a meditation on mortality, friendship, and the hunger for legacy that still resonates today. Scribble schools churned out everything from medical texts to love poetry, proving Babylon's brilliance wasn't confined to brick and mortar. It lived in the spaces between words. And just as their streets connected districts, their ideas connected civilizations, weaving a tapestry of knowledge that would endure long after their walls crumbled. The Epic of Gilgamesh wasn't just a story, it was a time capsule, preserved in the clay tablet archives of Babylon's legendary libraries, while the most complete version was discovered in Nineveh's ruins within the 7th century B.C.E. Library of Assyrian King Ashurbanipal. Every line whispered of its Babylonian origins. Scribes had meticulously copied these tales from much older Babylonian sources, some dating back nearly 4,000 years. Imagine holding one of those tablets, feeling the weight of history in your hands as cuneiform characters recount Gilgamesh's quest for immortality, a narrative so universal it transcends time. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Buried within the 11th tablet of the epic lies a story that shook the foundations of biblical scholarship, the tale of Utnapishtim, a man warned by the gods to build a massive ark before a world-ending flood. Sound familiar? The parallels to Noah's Ark are undeniable, from the divine warning to the release of birds to find dry land. When this Babylonian flood myth was first deciphered in the 19th century, it sparked fierce debates. How could two cultures separated by centuries share such strikingly similar stories? Some scholars argue the Hebrews adapted the narrative during their Babylonian exile, while others suggest both drew from an even older, lost tradition. What's often overlooked is how Babylon's literary influence didn't stop with Gilgamesh. The city's libraries were vast repositories of knowledge, housing everything from medical texts to star charts. Scribes didn't just preserve stories, they standardized them, refining oral traditions into written masterpieces. The epic itself evolved over centuries, with Babylonian versions adding layers of psychological depth absent from earlier Sumerian poems. Gilgamesh's lament for his fallen friend Enkidu, "How can I rest when Enkidu, whom I love, is dust?" resonates with a raw humanity that still pierces the heart today. Yet Babylon's connection to biblical lore runs deeper than flood myths. The city's towering ziggurat, Etemenanke, likely inspired the Tower of Babel story, a cautionary tale about human arrogance and divine intervention. But that's not just speculation. A 6th century B.C.E. tablet now housed in the Louvre describes Nebuchadnezzar II rebuilding the ziggurat to reach the heavens, echoing the biblical account word for word. Whether as a warning or a cultural memory, Babylon's shadow looms large over some of history's most enduring stories. And if you think that's remarkable, wait until you hear how Babylon turned mathematics into an art form. Because while their epics explored the human condition, their numbers charted the cosmos. The biblical Tower of Babel wasn't just a cautionary tale, it was a cultural memory etched in clay and stone. At its heart stood Etemenanke, Babylon's towering ziggurat dedicated to Marduk, a structure so immense it scraped the heavens. The name itself translates to House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, a boast that echoed the city's ambition. When Jewish exiles arrived in Babylon after the 6th century B.C.E. conquest of Jerusalem, they would have seen this colossal stepped pyramid dominating the skyline, its 7 tiers symbolizing the 7 known planets. To them, it wasn't just architecture, it was hubris made manifest, a monument to human defiance that begged for divine intervention. Archaeologists piecing together Etemenanke's dimensions face a puzzle wrapped in myth. A surviving tablet in the Louvre records Nebuchadnezzar II pride in rebuilding it. "I raised its summit to the sky, making it gleam like the sun." Cuneiform texts suggest it stood nearly 300 feet tall, equivalent to a modern 20-story building, with a base covering an acre of land. German excavator Robert Koldewey, who uncovered its foundations in the early 20th century, found traces of a massive staircase spiraling upward, just as Herodotus described. But here's the twist: the ziggurat wasn't unique. Cities across Mesopotamia built them as spiritual antennas linking Earth to the divine. Babylon's version stood out because of its scale and its fate. The biblical account transforms this architectural marvel into a metaphor. As the story goes, humanity's unified language fractured when God thwarted their tower-building ambitions. Yet dig deeper and you'll find Babylon's reality mirrored this theme, not through divine wrath but through astonishing diversity. The city was a crossroads of cultures where Aramaic traders haggled with Persian merchants and Jewish scribes studied alongside Egyptian astronomers. Cuneiform tablets reveal a metropolis buzzing with interpreters, its streets echoing with dozens of tongues. This wasn't confusion, it was cosmopolitanism at its zenith. Perhaps the Tower of Babel's true lesson lies in what followed its supposed collapse. Babylon didn't crumble under the weight of its tower. It thrived by turning diversity into strength. Its scholars compiled the world's first multilingual dictionaries, while its courts accommodated laws from conquered peoples. The ziggurate's ruins may have inspired a tale of division, but the city itself mastered the art of unity, proving that even the grandest towers leave legacies more complex than their legends. And if language was Babylon's living tapestry, its written words were threads of pure gold, because hidden beneath those ziggurate bricks lay libraries bursting with knowledge that would reshape the world. Babylon's streets hummed with a linguistic symphony, a cacophony of Aramaic haggling, Akkadian legal debates, and Persian courtly whispers blending into the Mesopotamian air. This wasn't just a city, it was a linguistic laboratory where empires collided and cultures cross-pollinated. Under Nebuchadnezzar's reign, the Babylonian dialect of Akkadian dominated official tablets, but walk through the market stalls by the Euphrates, and you'd hear Aramaic, the lingua franca of traders, rolling off merchants' tongues like water over river stones. Persian administrators added their own cadences after Cyrus the Great's conquest, yet instead of suppressing this diversity, Babylon's rulers did something radical. They embraced it. The Cyrus Cylinder, often called history's first charter of human rights, tells this story in baked clay when Cyrus took Babylon in 539 BCE. He didn't impose Persian as the state language or exile local elites. Instead, the cylinder boasts of restoring displaced peoples to their homelands and letting them worship their own gods. I gathered all their inhabitants and returned to them their dwellings. It declares in cuneiform script. Modern scholars debate whether this was genuine tolerance or political pragmatism, but the effect was undeniable. Jewish exiles, Greek mercenaries, and Egyptian artisans all contributed to Babylon's cultural mosaic, their languages scribbled in the margins of cuneiform tablets like graffiti on a cosmopolitan canvas. Now picture the city's markets at midday, dates and spices piled high as a Phoenician trader negotiates in broken Akkadian, while a Mede interpreter gestures wildly to bridge the gap. This linguistic tango wasn't just about communication, it fueled economic innovation. Contracts were drafted in multiple languages to avoid disputes, and silver shekels changed hands under standardized weights accepted from Tyre to Susa. Babylon's financial system grew so sophisticated that merchants used early forms of letters of credit, trusting that a promise etched in Aramaic would hold weight far beyond the city walls. Yet the real marvel wasn't the diversity itself, it was how Babylon harnessed it. Scribes compiled the world's first known bilingual dictionaries, painstakingly matching Sumerian logograms to Akkadian translations. Even the Epic of Gilgamesh survived thanks to this meticulous multilingual preservation, copied and recopied across languages like a torch passed between civilizations. And just as words flowed freely through Babylon's streets, so did ideas, mathematical concepts from India mingling with Egyptian geometry, Persian astronomy merging with local star charts. This cross-cultural alchemy didn't just enrich minds, it built empires. When Alexander the Great arrived centuries later, he didn't see a conquered city. He saw a blueprint for the interconnected Hellenistic world he dreamed of creating. But if languages were Babylon's lifeblood, its economy was the heartbeat, because those bustling markets and polyglot traders were part of a financial machine so advanced, it would feel eerily familiar today. Long before Wall Street or stock markets, Babylon's temples doubled as the world's first banks, sacred vaults where grain and silver flowed like water. Picture a priest in the shadow of the ziggurat, meticulously recording loans on a clay tablet, 10 bushels of barley to be repaid with interest at harvest. This wasn't just bookkeeping, it was the birth of modern finance. The Code of Hammurabi didn't just dictate punishment, it set interest rates in stone, capping grain loans at 33% and silver at 20%. Defaulters didn't face prison, they worked off debts through labor, a system balancing mercy with accountability. What's astonishing is how familiar these contracts feel today. Archaeologists have uncovered loan agreements detailing collateral homes, livestock, even future crop yields mirroring modern mortgage clauses. One tablet from Sippar, now in the British Museum, outlines a silver loan secured by a borrower's date orchard with payments spread over 5 years. Sound like your car loan? That's no coincidence. Babylon's financial innovations laid the groundwork for concepts we take for granted: compound interest, amortization, even bankruptcy protections. Debtors could petition for relief during droughts, and women, uniquely for the era, could act as co-signers, proving Babylon's system valued pragmatism over patriarchy. But this financial web extended beyond temples. Private lenders flourished too, their tablets bearing witness to a thriving credit economy. Merchants funded expeditions to distant lands, while farmers borrowed against next season's harvest. The city even developed an early form of checksclay promissory notes, transferable between traders. Yet, unlike today's abstract stock tickers, every transaction remained deeply personal. Default notices often included pleas for extensions, revealing the human drama behind the numbers. Step beyond the temple archives into Babylon's streets, and you'd see this system in action. Market stalls bustled with traders weighing silver rings on standardized scales, while scribes notarized contracts at makeshift desks. The clink of currency mingled with the scent of baking bread, a reminder that finance wasn't just about wealth but survival. Families pooled resources to rent irrigation equipment, and apprentices borrowed to pay trade guild fees, their debts erased once they mastered their craft. This financial fluidity transformed daily life. A baker could expand her shop with a temple loan, a soldier's widow might invest borrowed silver in a weaving business, and caravan drivers leveraged credit to fund cross-desert trade. Babylon proved that money at its best wasn't just a tool, it was a ladder turning aspiration into achievement. And as the sun set over the Euphrates, casting long shadows across the counting houses, one truth became clear: the distance between an ancient grain loan and a modern mortgage is shorter than we think. Yet for all its economic sophistication, Babylon's heartbeat wasn't just silver and ledger tablets, it pulsed in the rhythms of ordinary people. Because beyond the temples and markets lay neighborhoods teeming with life, where families raised children, told stories, and turned houses into homes. Forget gold or silver, Babylon's real currency flowed in clay jugs, frothy and golden. Workers building the city's towering ziggurats didn't just earn wages, they collected daily beer rations, meticulously recorded in cuneiform tablets like prehistoric pay stubs. A 4,000-year-old tablet from lists laborers receiving 2 liters of beer per day, enough to keep them hydrated and perhaps happily compliant under the Mesopotamian sun. But this wasn't just about quenching thirst. Beer was a nutritional powerhouse in a land where water sources could be unreliable. Fermentation killed pathogens, turning grain into liquid sustenance packed with calories and vitamins. The Babylonians took their brewing so seriously, they literally worshipped the craft. The hymn to Ninkasi, etched onto tablets around 1800 B. CE, doubles as both a prayer and the world's oldest beer recipe. Imagine priests chanting verses that detailed each step, from malting barley to fermenting vats, turning the act of brewing into a sacred ritual. Ninkasi wasn't just a goddess, she was a divine bartender, ensuring every sip carried her blessing. What's even more fascinating, beer shaped Babylon's social fabric. Taverns, often run by women, became hubs of gossip and informal justice. A law in Hammurabi's code famously punished bartenders who watered down drinks or overcharged, a felony punishable by drowning. Clearly, Babylonians took their pint integrity seriously, but beer was just the start of their culinary ingenuity. Excavations reveal kitchens seasoned with coriander, cumin, and saffron, while tablets describe stews of lamb, leeks, and garlic served with flatbreads. One recipe for bird pie layered pigeon meat between dough, a Bronze Age ancestor of the modern pot pie. Behind every frothy jug and spiced stew lay a deeper truth. Babylon understood that culture isn't built on bricks alone, but on the shared flavors that fuel both bodies and spirits. And if that makes you thirsty for more, just wait until you hear how they turned dessert into an art form. The streets of Babylon smelled of sizzling lamb and cumin, where harried workers could grab a hot meal without ever stepping into a kitchen. Archaeologists digging through the city's ruins have uncovered something unexpected: crude clay grills and stacks of skewers, the Bronze Age equivalent of fast food stalls. These weren't just occasional finds. Entire neighborhoods seem to have relied on street vendors, proving Babylon's love for convenience is as old as the city itself. Imagine a construction worker on the ziggurat project, his hands dusty from brickwork, tossing a copper ring to a vendor for a skewer of marinated goat meat charred over an open flame. The transaction took seconds, but it reveals a timeless truth. Even 4,000 years ago, people craved quick, flavorful meals between shifts. One remarkable artifact brings this scene to life: a clay tablet now housed in Yale's Babylonian collection. Unlike legal codes or star charts, this one's a cookbook, written in meticulous cuneiform around 1700 BCE. It details a lamb stew so elaborate it could rival modern recipes. The instructions call for tenderizing the meat with beer naturally, then simmering it with blood, garlic, and a handful of mystery herbs referred to simply as mountain flavors. The finishing touch: a dusting of dried barley cakes to thicken the broth, creating a texture halfway between soup and dumplings. Food historians recreating the dish describe it as rich and earthy, with a tang from fermented grains that lingers on the tongue. But street food wasn't just about sustenance, it was social glue. Vendors clustered near worksites and canals, their stalls becoming informal meeting spots where laborers exchanged gossip between bites. Excavations near the Ishtar Gate revealed a trove of disposable clay bowls, many still charred from reheating. These weren't family heirlooms, they were the paper plates of antiquity, tossed aside after use. Some even bear fingerprints pressed into the rim, a fleeting signature from the last person who held them. And if you think Babylon's approach to food was pragmatic, wait until you hear how they treated ailments. Because when it came to medicine, they blended science and superstition in ways that would baffle modern doctors. A headache might be cured with a paste of crushed willow bark, an early form of aspirin followed by an incantation to banish evil spirits. Broken bones were set with splints while priests chanted prayers to the healing goddess Gula. Their medical texts, like the Diagnostic Handbook, listed symptoms alongside celestial omens, suggesting a fractured world where germs and gods shared equal blame for illness. Yet for all their quirks, Babylonian physicians achieved startling breakthroughs. They diagnosed everything from epilepsy to liver disease, and surgical texts describe draining abscesses with obsidian blades sharper than modern steel. One prescription for an eye infection mixed antimony powder with crocodile bile, a dubious remedy until researchers realized the compound had genuine antibacterial properties. So the next time you pick up takeout after a long day, remember you're part of a tradition stretching back to Babylon's bustling streets. where the aroma of spiced stews mingled with the sounds of a city too busy to slow down. And if your meal doesn't sit well, let's just say their medical advice hasn't aged quite as gracefully as their recipes. Babylonian doctors wielded two kinds of medicine, one brewed in jars, the other whispered to the stars. When a patient stumbled into a healing house clutching their stomach, the physician might reach for a clay flask of beer laced with mashed willow bark, then murmur an incantation to Lamashtu, the demoness of disease. To modern eyes, this seems like madness, mixing science with superstition. But dig deeper, and you'll find a medical system that was astonishingly sophisticated, even by today's standards. Take the Diagnostic Handbook, a sprawling cuneiform text compiled around 1000 B.C.E. It catalogues illnesses with eerie precision, linking symptoms like fever-induced delirium to specific remedies. One prescription for digestive trouble called for beer infused with mint and honey, a concoction modern researchers confirm could soothe inflammation. Another tablet details a poultice of crushed sesame and turpentine resin for wounds, a combination now known to have antibacterial properties. Yet right beside these practical treatments, the same physician might cast spells to drive out invisible, hand-of-ghost afflictions. Here's what's fascinating: they weren't just guessing. Excavations at Babylonian sites have uncovered surgical tools that would make a modern surgeon nod in respect: bronze scalpels with obsidian edges sharper than steel, bone drills for trepanation, and even rudimentary catheters. A terracotta model of a sheep's liver, used for teaching diagnostics, shows intricate anatomical markings that match real organ structures. These healers clearly understood the body's mechanics, even if they blamed some malfunctions on supernatural forces. So was this superstition or early holistic medicine? Perhaps both. Babylonians saw no contradiction in treating the physical and spiritual simultaneously. A broken leg required splints and bandages, but also prayers to Gula, the goddess of healing, to ensure full recovery. Their medical tablets often paired plant-based remedies with rituals, suggesting they viewed illness as a multifaceted enemy. Now consider this: the same culture that blended beer and incantations also produced mathematical tablets solving quadratic equations. While priests chanted over the sick, scribes a few streets away were calculating the motion of Jupiter with precision that would stump European astronomers for millennia. This duality, practical genius entwined with mystical belief, wasn't confusion. It was the Babylonian way of engaging with a universe far more complex than they could yet fully explain. And if their medical texts reveal a blend of intuition and observation, their mathematical tablets lay bare a mind-bending mastery of numbers, because when Babylonians weren't diagnosing fevers, they were rewriting the rules of mathematics itself. While Pythagoras gets credit for his famous theorem, Babylonian mathematicians were solving complex equations over 1,000 years earlier, using a numerical system so advanced we still rely on its legacy every time we check the clock. Their base 60 system, known as sexagesimal, didn't just count minutes and hours, it unlocked mathematical possibilities that would stump other civilizations for centuries. Take tablet YBC 7289, a small clay square from around 1800 BCE that's now housed at Yale University. At first glance, it looks like a simple diagram, a square with diagonals. But the numbers etched beside them reveal something astonishing. The length of the diagonal is marked as 1, 24, 51, and 10 in their base 60 notation. Convert that to our decimal system, and you get 1.414213, an approximation of the square root of 2 accurate to 6 decimal places. This wasn't just theoretical scribbling. Babylon's architects used these calculations to ensure perfect right angles in their ziggurats and canals. The precision of the Ishtar Gate's dimensions or the alignment of Procession Street with celestial events didn't happen by chance. They were the work of mathematicians wielding clay tablets like slide rules. Their methods were elegantly practical. To find square root 2, they'd start with an estimate, then refine it using an iterative process eerily similar to modern algorithms. One tablet even outlines a step-by-step guide. Take half the side, multiply it by itself, subtract that from the area, then adjust. It's a Bronze Age version of the Newton-Raphson method, millennia before calculus existed. What's truly mind-bending is how this system echoes in our daily lives. Those 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, direct descendants of Babylon's sexagesimal logic. The system's brilliance lay in its divisibility. 60 can be split evenly by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30, making it perfect for trade, astronomy, and construction. Even our modern degrees in a circle trace back to this base 60 framework. But here's the kicker: these mathematical triumphs weren't locked away in temples. Market inspectors used geometry to verify land claims, while scribes taught students to solve quadratic equations for fun. A tablet from the ancient city of Sippar shows a playful word problem. I added the area and the side of my square, and it's 3/4. What's the side length? The solution, worked out in cuneiform, mirrors the quadratic formula we learn in high school today. So the next time you glance at your clock or measure an angle, remember, you're tapping into a numerical revolution sparked by Babylon's unsung geniuses. Their math wasn't just about numbers. It was the invisible scaffolding holding up an empire where architecture kissed the sky and streets ran straight as celestial meridians. And if that doesn't make you see your calculator in a whole new light, just wait until you hear how they tracked planets with the accuracy of a modern observatory. The bricks of Babylon didn't just sit in place, they practically clung together, defying time and tide with a secret weapon, bitumen. This thick, black sludge, bubbling up from natural springs near Hit, was the Mesopotamian superglue that turned ordinary clay bricks into flood-proof fortresses. Workers slathered it between every layer, creating waterproof seals so effective that even after 4,000 years, sections of the city's river walls still stand bone dry. But bitumen was just the start. Babylon's engineers mastered the art of load distribution with arches and vaults centuries before Rome's aqueducts graced the landscape. Walk through the ruins of Nebuchadnezzar's palace, and you'll find ceilings shaped like inverted boats, a clever trick that transferred weight outward to supporting walls, allowing for grand, column-free halls that awed visitors. What's astonishing is how these techniques mirror modern principles. The bitumen acted like ancient asphalt, flexing slightly during earthquakes to prevent cracks, while the arches functioned like stone vertebrae, each block pressing against its neighbor to create unshakable stability. Roman engineers later perfected these methods, but Babylonian blueprints were the true pioneers. Even their mortar was ahead of its time, mixed with crushed pottery for extra grip, a precursor to today's composite materials. Yet for all their ingenuity, Babylon's foundations held a fatal flaw. The very river that gave life to the city, the Euphrates, also spelled its doom. Over centuries, rising salinity from irrigation turned fertile fields barren, while shifting water tables weakened brickwork from below. By the time Persian conquerors arrived, Babylon's once proud walls were already fighting a losing battle against nature's slow creep. The lesson: even the mightiest engineering can't outlast neglect. And as those bricks slowly surrendered to the sands, they took with them secrets we're only beginning to rediscover. Because beneath the cracked bitumen and toppled arches lay another marvel, one that didn't just shape buildings, but the very way we measure the world. The fall of Babylon wasn't marked by clashing swords or crumbling walls. It came with a whisper, not a roar, when Cyrus the Great marched his Persian army toward the city in 539 BCE. Its legendary defenses should have triggered an epic siege. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The gates swung open. According to the Cyrus cylinder, a clay record now housed in the British Museum, the conqueror was welcomed as a liberator, not a foe. Babylonian texts describe priests and citizens disillusioned with their own king, Nabonidus, who'd neglected the city's gods while obsessing over moon worship in distant Arabia. Cyrus cleverly positioned himself as Marduk's chosen restorer, even returning displaced statues of deities to their temples. The so-called conquest was more like a political handshake, with Babylon's bureaucracy remaining largely intact under Persian rule. Yet this peaceful transition masks a darker irony. Babylon's true undoing wasn't foreign armies, it was the very river that birthed its glory. Centuries of intensive irrigation had salted the soil, a silent crisis recorded in cuneiform crop reports. Tablets from the late Persian period lament wheat yields dropping by 2/3, forcing a shift to salt-tolerant barley. By the time Alexander the Great arrived in 331 BCE, dreaming of restoring Babylon as his imperial capital, the Euphrates had already begun its slow betrayal. Silt buildup choked canals, turning lush fields into marshes. When Alexander died in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar just 8 years later, his successors abandoned his vision, opting for fresh coastal cities like Seleucia. Modern sediment cores confirm this environmental tragedy. Layers of clay reveal how once fertile plains became saline wastelands, while ancient Persian administrative texts note dwindling tax revenues from the region. The myth of divine retribution, that Babylon fell because of its arrogance, crumbles under this data. No god smote the city. Its farmers simply pumped too much water onto their fields, flushing minerals to the surface until the land could no longer sustain its people. What lingers isn't just the lesson of ecological fragility, but the paradox of survival. Babylon's physical dominance faded, yet its ideas outlived empires. The Code of Hammurabi inspired Persian and later Roman law. Its astronomy fueled Greek science. Even Cyrus's bloodless victory became a template for future conquerors seeking legitimacy. The city's final abandonment wasn't a dramatic collapse, but a slow retreat, a fading heartbeat as merchants packed their wares, scribes stored their tablets, and the last families drifted toward greener horizons. Perhaps that's the most humbling truth of all. Civilizations don't always die in fire and chaos. Sometimes they simply exhale, leaving behind whispers in clay and stone that echo long after their rivers run dry. Saddam Hussein saw himself as the heir to Nebuchadnezzar's legacy, and he wasn't shy about proving it. In the 1980s, the Iraqi dictator launched a colossal project to resurrect Babylon's glory, brick by brick. But this wasn't restoration, it was reinvention. Bulldozers carved new pathways through archaeological layers, while modern kilns fired thousands of bricks stamped with a telling inscription. This was built by Saddam Hussein, son of Nebuchadnezzar, to glorify Iraq. The irony was as thick as the mortar between those bricks. Here was a man mimicking the ancient king who'd once stamped his own name into history, yet doing so with a heavy hand that horrified scholars. Archaeologists watched in dismay as original ruins were dismantled to make way for Hussein's vision, a theme park version of antiquity, complete with a palace for himself overlooking the site. The damage went deeper than aesthetics. To construct a modern processional road, workers dug straight through untouched strata, obliterating clues about daily life in Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Ancient bricks, some bearing cuneiform inscriptions, were reportedly pilfered for souvenirs or repurposed in new walls. One team discovered a Neo-Babylonian drainage system crushed under concrete, meant to support tourist foot traffic. The backlash was swift. UNESCO condemned the project as tantamount to fabricating history, while Iraqi archaeologists whispered about mosaics smashed to accommodate Hussein's ego. But here's the uncomfortable question. Was this really so different from what Nebuchadnezzar had done? The original king hadn't preserved his predecessor's work, he'd buried it under his own monuments. Every empire rebuilds in its own image, whether with clay bricks or propaganda. Hussein's sin wasn't ambition, it was carelessness. Where the Babylonians meticulously recorded their renovations, his workers paved over mysteries we'll never recover. Yet amid this controversy, something unexpected emerged. Modern surveys of the site revealed hidden details. Even Hussein's bulldozers missed original foundations stretching far beyond the reconstructed walls, hinting at a city even grander than we'd imagined. Satellite imaging exposed buried canals aligning with cuneiform maps, while ground-penetrating radar pinpointed untouched archives beneath the tourist zone. The past, it seems, refuses to be erased entirely, so perhaps the lesson isn't whether we should rebuild history, but how we listen to what's still whispering beneath our feet. Because every shovel that damages also uncovers, and every stamp of ego eventually becomes just another layer in Babylon's endless story. Beneath the sun-baked plains of modern Iraq, an entire city whispers to us through fragments. Less than 10% of ancient Babylon has seen the light of day since its abandonment over 2,000 years ago. Imagine standing at the edge of the current excavation sites, where the ground slopes into untouched earth. Every step beyond the roped-off areas could crush undiscovered tablets or collapse the ceilings of palaces we don't yet know exist. Recent drone surveys have peeled back the topsoil without disturbing it, revealing ghostly outlines of walls and canals stretching far beyond the reconstructed Ishtar Gate. These infrared images show grid-like patterns matching descriptions of residential districts mentioned in cuneiform records, neighborhoods where merchants, poets, and laborers lived, their stories still locked in the dirt. The most tantalizing possibility, a royal archive. Babylon's scribes were obsessive record keepers, and while we've found libraries in Nineveh and private collections in Ur, the heart of Nebuchadnezzar's bureaucracy remains hidden. Archaeologists whisper about a potential trove near the Esagila temple complex, where administrative tablets would have been stored. One fragmentary text even references a house of tablets near the ziggurat, a phrase that sends scholars into a frenzy. If uncovered, it could rewrite entire chapters of Mesopotamian history, from trade networks to diplomatic correspondence with Egypt and the Hittites. But the real treasure might be simpler, everyday life. Excavations so far have focused on grand monuments and temples, leaving the homes of ordinary Babylonians buried. A single undisturbed kitchen could reveal cooking utensils, diet, even children's toys, details no royal inscription would bother to note. Ground-penetrating radar near the Euphrates' old banks has detected what might be a potter's workshop, its kilns preserved under layers of silt. Another anomaly could be a schoolroom, littered with practice tablets where young scribes scratched clumsy cuneiform before mastering their craft. The challenge isn't just finding these sites, it's protecting them. Looting pits scar the landscape, and groundwater seepage threatens delicate artifacts. Each passing year erodes more of the city's memory, making urgent what one archaeologist called a race against entropy. Yet the potential rewards are staggering. A single new tablet might hold the missing verse of a hymn, the name of a forgotten queen, or the solution to a mathematical problem we didn't know they'd solved. And that's the haunting beauty of Babylon. Its story isn't finished. every shovelful of earth could unveil a revelation, turning legend into fact or appending what we thought we knew. Which brings us to the final, most poignant truth about this city. Its greatest gift to us isn't just what it left behind, but the mysteries that still beckon from the unexcavated dark. Babylon's fingerprints are everywhere in pop culture, not as dusty relics, but as living symbols that shape how we imagine grandeur and rebellion. Take the towering city of Zion in the Matrix films, its cavernous docking bays and spiraling architecture directly inspired by artists' reconstructions of Babylon's ziggurats and hanging gardens. The Wachowskis didn't just borrow aesthetics, they tapped into the city's mythic role as humanity's last bastion against chaos. Even the name Zion echoes Babylon's duality, both a sanctuary and a battleground. Then there's Disney's Aladdin, where Agrabah's bustling markets and domed palaces are pure Babylonian fantasy, filtered through a Hollywood lens. The animators studied Ishtar Gate motifs for Jafar's palace, its blue-tiled halls shimmering with the same lapis lazuli hues that awed ancient visitors. But Babylon's influence isn't just visual. Think of every dystopian story where a glittering metropolis hides corruption, Blade Runner's neon sprawl, the Hunger Games capital, all descendants of Babylon's archetype, a beacon of progress shadowed by excess. Why does this ancient city still haunt our stories? Because Babylon mastered the art of paradox. It was both a cradle of lore and a byword for decadence, a place where astronomers mapped the stars while taverns overflowed with beer. When filmmakers name a nightclub Babylon, Beverly Hills Cop, or a cyberpunk megacity Babylon AD, they're invoking that same tension between brilliance and ruin. Even in music, David Gray's Babylon, Lady Gaga's Babylon, the name conjures longing and lost glory. But here's the twist: pop culture rarely shows Babylon's true genius. We get the Tower of Babel's folly, not its mathematical precision, the Hanging Gardens' romance, not their irrigation science. Perhaps that's the ultimate testament to its legacy. The city became bigger than history, a canvas for our own dreams and warnings. Every time a director frames a skyline or a songwriter whispers Babylon, they're not just referencing the past, they're adding another layer to a myth that refuses to die.